Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, have you been seeing any of the Senate confirmation hearings for the Biden's pick for the ATF director? I haven't kept up real close, but I've definitely been seeing the highlights. Basically, one of them, in case you haven't heard, he has basically said that he would be okay with banning, completely outlawing all AR-15s. He also defined assault weapons as any long gun capable of shooting a round larger than a .22 caliber and accepting some form of a magazine is considered an assault weapon in his mind. This is the guy that's most likely going to be in charge of the ATF. And while the ATF doesn't necessarily create law, they certainly have a lot of power, as we've seen over the last few years, in determining what is illegal and what is not. And I have a feeling, as much as many of us have complained over the past 4 years of what's gone on during the Trump administration, that, you know, we just haven't liked what the ATF has been doing. All this craziness with, you know, how they define stuff. I think it's going to get a lot worse. And so anyways, that's not the topic of this video, but I thought we would talk about, for just a brief moment, this ATF director, or the proposed ATF director. And if you don't know, this is the guy, he was one of the senior agents over the whole Waco incident down in Texas many years ago. And he's been a gun control advocate. He's actually worked for a gun control organization. So this guy is no friend to guns. And it's amazing that they would put that person as the ATF. It's quite obvious that, you know, you have an organization or a department that's supposed to monitor illegal use of firearms, and you get someone that actually, you know, hates them altogether to run it. I think that if that happens, we're going to start seeing some more very intrusive rulings coming from the ATF. But anyways, we can talk about that another time. Mostly what I wanted to talk about today is that I need to be stocking up. We talk about that all the time, right? Stocking up on food. We talk about growing food. We talk about, you know, purchasing food in bulk quantities and stuff like that. And I wanted to talk about, and this may not be a very long video, but I think it's an important something to talk about, and because not every prepper probably knows this. Some of you old school ones do, but not everyone does. You can acquire quite a large amount of food in bulk from farm stores. Now, I know there is an argument to be said that a lot of this stuff that I'm referring to is only meant for animal consumption. And I am not going to necessarily advise you to eat food that is meant for animal consumption. You can do the research on your own. I have done it, and I have compared the food that we purchase for animal consumption versus food purchased for human consumption. And if you buy cleaned corn, and depending on the brand of it, for animals, there's really not any different than what you would purchase for cattle. The same thing with certain grains. And so, while this isn't the only thing we're going to talk about, I do want to say that you can acquire quite a large bulk of food in a short amount of time with not a whole lot of money by buying 50-pound bags of food. What you should do is look around, and being that I don't know where you live and what's in your area, I can't tell you, but out here where we live, in larger cities, or at least moderately sized cities, you sometimes have these more national chain type farm stores. And I kind of like to call them hobby farm stores. And no offense to anyone that only has a few acres. We only have a few acres. But a lot of these stores tend to, you know, focus their store to people that, you know, they're not real farmers. They just kind of play with it, right? They just kind of play farm. And then there's also, in a lot of these rural farming communities, you have the actual farm and feed stores. which is where your real farmers go to. And if you take offense to this, I'm sorry. I'm okay with referring to ourselves here as a small farm. We're not big production anything here. But there's also these, different stores that are, like I said, they cater to the big farmers. They're not fancy and flashy or anything like that. Don't be afraid to go into those. If you're not some big farmer and you don't know the lingo or you're not sure exactly what you're looking for, don't be afraid to go into those. And a lot of times, some of these stores, you can buy whole grains of different grains and seeds, because a lot of farmers, they mix their own feed for their animals, depending on what they're raising. And so they'll buy just bulk of a certain type of seed or a certain type of grain, and they mix it themselves, and they make their own animal feed. And if you go in and you talk to them, you'd be surprised at what they would have available. They also have things that are seeds to regrow, such as wheat. And a wheat seed to grow wheat is also the same thing that you grind up to make flour. So look around, kind of test things. You can also do some research online. I've had fairly good success at researching certain products that are labeled for animal use only to find out some information of what the difference is. And one of those is salt. We've purchased quite a large quantity of different kinds of salts. And one of them, it's a major brand. It's the, and it just slipped my mind. It's the one that they mine it out of Utah. They're in Salt Lake City, that area. But they're very well known for making salt for people. But they also have a product that they have the same kind of salt for animals. And so you can do some research on what the difference is. And you can decide for yourself, are you willing to accept the fact that it may not be as clean, or that it may be, there may be some contaminants in there. And a lot of times the contaminants, for instance, with salt, there may be a little bit of grit, a little sand in there where they haven't separated the salt from some, other things as well. And depending on your intended use, it may be okay. You may not, worry about that. If you're using it for certain products to preserve things, or to melt things, if you're using it for ice melt or whatever it is. Same thing with food products. You can also grow lots of food with it. This bulk corn and bulk wheat and certain things, can also be used to grow food with, depending on what they are. So the point is with this is you can acquire quite a bit of food if you go to these farm stores and you buy food in bulk that's for animals. I know that the FDA probably would not like this video. Maybe YouTube won't like it too. I don't know. But it's kind of a modern thing, a modern first world country thing, that we've gotten this idea that we couldn't eat something like that. I'm not advocating going out and buying bags of dog food and eating it. I'm just saying that sometimes you can buy corn or peas or other certain types of seeds that you and I can eat, that we eat maybe all the time, but you can buy it meant for animals, for cattle, and pick out the husks and the hulls out of the stuff. Maybe you rinse it a little bit with water, and it's totally fine to eat. And only because of our being a modern human, we think that that's disgusting. So that's my 10-minute almost tip of how you can acquire a lot of food for a little bit of money, because you can buy this kind of stuff greatly reduced price compared to the same product that's labeled for human consumption. 50 pounds of corn that's meant for cattle is a lot cheaper, anywhere between $6 and $10 for 50 pounds versus 50 pounds of corn meant for humans, which could be, anywhere from $1 a pound or more. So again, something to think about. It's something to research on your own. I can't advise you to do this or not. I can just tell you that some people do it, and we are one of those some people. I do check the stuff, and there's certain brands. I've bought a couple. I've actually bought 3 different brands of corn, for instance, that's sold locally in my area. And there's one particular one, they all are about the same price, but there's one particular one that is really clean. I hardly ever find anything in it. And then there's another brand, again, about the same price, and there's all kinds of corn husks and stubs in it and things like that. So of course I go with the one that's clean. And we store that up in buckets, and it's an optional backup food source if you ever need it. So there's a way to acquire that. There's also other ways, of course, just grocery stores is one way. Look for certain types of grocery stores. A lot of people like Aldi. I know that's not everywhere, but Aldi's grocery stores are a lot of places, and their canned foods typically are much cheaper than your regular grocery store. There's also discount grocery stores that sell stuff that are purchased through insurance salvage. And without going into great detail, if you don't know what that is, they may buy an entire truckload of stuff at a discounted price because it's near expiration on it, or that's best used by. It's not really an expiration date. Maybe a whole pallet, something fell on it and damaged some of the boxes or the cans, but not all of them, and they just buy the whole pallet at a discounted price. And so a lot of times you can get excellent deals on foods. And I say all this because I get on here nearly every day, and I advise people to start stocking up. And even if you're stocking up already and have done so for years, to continue to do it, because things are progressively worsening. The economy's getting worse. Scarcities are getting worse. Stuff with the weather, with food, is going to start having more long-term effects. Everything in every area just about is getting worse. So you need to not just start stocking up, but continually, every chance you get, to stock up. And I think a lot of people just don't know exactly what that means. And I've made videos in the past of different items that's advisable to stock up on. But a lot of times people don't know, and things are expensive. And I've been to a lot of these bigger, fancier, flashier grocery stores, and quite frankly, their prices are kind of high. And I can't imagine walking into one of those and buying my preps from them, because my money's just not going to go as far. So use your brain when you're buying your preps. Another way that you can do it, especially if there's several of you, and that's the key. If there are several people in your area, if you're part of a MAG or a prepper group or a homestead group or homeschool group, and there's several of you like-minded, if you go together, you can make a large purchase. You can purchase a pallet of rice, and the prices are drastically cheaper. There's places that you can go and purchase directly from either the manufacturer, directly from the distributor, and purchase, a pallet of 50-pound bag beans or something like that. That's always an option. Also look at other places, like if you have, Mennonites and Amish, Quaker. There's another one, and I can't think of it. My goodness, they're kind of similar, and it slipped my mind, but I know that a lot of those communities, they have their own little grocery stores, and a lot of times they have bulk stores where you can go in and you can purchase things in bulk from them, and sometimes they are quite cheap. For instance, out here, we have a few Amish stores that we go to, and sometimes you can buy the exact same item, same brand, same item that you would at another store, and it's much cheaper. The only thing I can figure is that they don't have near the overhead. It's in a metal building on their property. They don't have electric bills. It's run by their family. So their overhead is much cheaper than at a big store. So they're just, pricing it appropriately. Look for things like that. When you talk about or think about, and I talk about, when I talk about and you think about stocking up with 2 years worth of food, a lot of people are thinking, my goodness, our monthly food bill is $700, and 700 times 24, that's a lot of money. Well, I guess you can do that, but the reality is you can come up with, a year to 2 years worth of food for much, much less than that. You would be surprised with only just a few hundred or a few, $1,000 or $2, how much food you can actually stock up on if you purchase appropriately. Pasta is another one. There's ways that you can buy large amounts of pasta for a very cheap price. Here's a thing to remember with pasta. There's all different kinds of pastas, different shapes and sizes. In the end, it's all the same stuff. It's just a different shape and size. And I understand that certain ones are better for certain dishes, but the reality is pasta's pasta. And typically your macaroni noodles are the cheapest. So you have all these different pastas. They're all made with the exact same ingredients. They're just different shapes, and they're priced differently. So while we may purchase pastas on a weekly, monthly basis for our normal food, for our preps, we pretty much only purchase macaroni pasta because it's extremely cheap. And we can buy it in 10 and 15 pound containers quite reasonably and put that away. And if it's stored properly, pasta has a very, very long shelf life, at least 10 and probably at least 20 years if it's stored properly. So when you're out purchasing your stuff, we kind of do two different ways. Number one, when we go and purchase our normal groceries, and we try to purchase groceries once a month, we always buy extra. We buy a little extra, and these are preps. And we know that we're putting that food away for preps. And a lot of times that food is, of course, bought at a regular grocery store. But then we also, ever so often, as we put money aside, go to certain stores and make larger quantity purchases of certain items that are specifically for prepping. And that's when we go to those stores, whether it's a feed store, an Amish store, or a discount grocery store, or buying direct from a supplier or something like that. And we may purchase $200, $300, $400, $500, but this is money that we've been saving up, putting aside, and we're able to make a very large purchase. Another one, and I kind of forgot about this, it slipped my mind, LDS, Latter-day Saints. A lot of people refer to them as Mormon. And of course, we are not affiliated at all with that church, but in some of the larger cities, they have stores where they sell food. A lot of times they'll have one side's kind of for charity, where it's not for sale, it's for people that are coming there for charitable purposes, and the other side, they sell stuff. And the stuff that they sell are typically bulk stuff. It's prepping stuff. If you don't know, the LDS, they're big into prepping. It's kind of built into their religion. And you can buy cans of dehydrated onions and corn and carrots and big bags of wheat berries and things like that. Pretty cheap, quite reasonable. And I have gone to those. We don't have any close, but we did one day make a little over a 2-hour trip to drive to one, and we weren't sure if it was going to be worth it or not. And in the end, I think it was very worth it to make that 2-hour trip to one with the stuff that we bought, with the price that we bought it at. So you have to be creative sometimes. I'd get on here and I say, have 2 years worth of food, and I know a lot of people are thinking, my goodness, that's a lot. If you're creative, if you open your mind, if you think outside the box, you can acquire 1 and 2 years worth of food supply for much less than I think most of you realize. So for those of you that have done this, that are the ones that have a lot of preps, and you agree with what I'm saying, and you know that this is true, chime in with maybe the places that you go. I'm sure I've missed some ideas of where you can go and acquire food much cheaper than just going to your local Kroger store and paying premium prices for an item. So chime in so that we can share that with others. But the point is, folks, is with the state of the world right now, you've got to be stocking up, because things are kind of getting to that tailspin, downward spiral place right now, and we really need to be getting prepared. All right, folks, thank you all for watching. Catch you in the next video.